Alrighty, so I'm doing what I so often do, find one spot in my tiny little backyard from which I can see a little bit of the Sandia mountain. In this case, the sun is behind me, so this little reflection you see in the bottom left of the through the scope image is because there's sun shining above my right shoulder. I'm going to try to cover it with my arm, but occasionally it will reappear. The rifle scope we're looking at today is the 5-25 by 50 Acura RS25, I believe, or RS25i scope from Revic. This is their relatively conventional scope as opposed to the smart scope that they make. The intention here is to make what they believe to be the best configured long-range hunting scope on the market. That's what they do. Gunworks guys are hunters, and this is really what they're aiming at. I have to admit, I like this scope quite a bit, a lot more than I thought I would when I started. And one of the reasons is the reticle. The way they constructed the reticle is arguably one of the finest general purpose hunting reticle for everything from close range to long range on the market. Right now, the scope is on 25 power. What you're seeing way out there is several miles out. That's the top of the Sandia mountain. I am going to occasionally check focus and check the zoom settings. Again, right now I'm on 25. There are several things closer that we'll focus on again. But right now, let's just go through the magnification. 25. Now we're 20. 15. 10. And notice that as I dial out, the way this reticle is set up, because it's almost like a modernized version of the German number 1, these relatively thick tapering center post that gets almost to the center, not quite to the center, but almost to the center, makes this reticle remarkably visible, no matter what magnification you're on. Now we're at 8, 6, and this is the lowest 5. Even on 5, if I had to take a shot in a hurry, I would not be in any way, shape, or form prevented from doing so. The reticle is intuitive and very naturally draws the eye to the center. Because of that, one of the sacrifices, so to speak, is you don't have a tree, right? So the way this reticle is designed, you can make small corrections around the center. I'll go back on high power in a moment and explain how you can do that. But the operating principle for long range here is you're going to dial for elevation, and then you're going to hold for wind. The way the illumination is done is a push button illumination on the side, and the only thing that's illuminated is the little tiny center crosshair. I'm going to press illumination. In a fairly bright light, you're probably not going to see it especially well. It didn't work. This camera auto adjusts. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and you'll see it a little bit better. We are back on 25. Let's cover around it. There's a little bit center illuminated. I'll post it. I'll make a better picture at a later point. The camera tries to gain up exposure to give you a better view of the picture. The one fatal flaw of this reticle is that it's in the MOA design, but they have a note somewhere out there that they're making a mill-ready version for it. I'm waiting for it rather anxiously. The way this reticle is structured is very, very clever. In the center, there is a crosshair, and that's the only part that is illuminated. And it's basically 4 hash marks forming a crosshair. Each one is 1 MOA long, then there's 1 MOA gap, and then there's basically, you see, for 8, 12, 16 MOA of wind. There are indicators, which way the wind needs to be blowing for you to hold in that direction. You can basically go in 1 MOA steps, and if you need half MOA somehow, if you're good enough for that in the field, I don't think that's really a big. In the field, that's questionable. You can comfortably figure out where the center point is within each 1 MOA stop. The vertical center bar starts, if my count is correct, 4 MOA below center. What that means is that when you're on high power, you have enough separation there. The center is nicely clear. If you make a shot, you should be able to, and you missed, you should be able to see where. Nothing is really blocking it. But when you are on low power, shooting at closer range, It's 4 away, right, just over 4 inches at 100 yards. So it's not a ton of error, and you can easily, even if you don't perfectly resolve the center thin lines, this the top of this bottom post gives you a very, very nice aiming point that's going to get your shot, have it just so slightly high. It's basically, for practical purposes, the top of the center post is almost your MPBR aiming point. If, let's say, you get the crosshair sighted in dead on at 100 yards. Right. So it's a very interesting setup. I like this reticle a lot. I think conceptually it's a very, very nice design. On one hand, it is relatively clean and intuitive. On the other hand, it gives you enough features without pushing too much stuff on you. Everything is nicely labeled, and again, these thick tapering bars from the bottom and from the sides, to me, I think they make all the difference in the world. Let's zoom out and look at something a little bit closer. In this case, it's again going to be the humidifier on my neighbor's roof. Again, to reiterate for the YouTube censorship stuff, see, I'm not pointing guns at anyone. The scope is sitting on a tripod, and it is and the camera is behind it. I'm going to show you a picture momentarily. So let's point it elsewhere and see what we can do. There we go. There's that rusty old humidifier. It's not that rusty. And the interesting thing is I'm right now essentially on infinity side focus setting. And what you see is that the depth of field is quite tremendous. Let's go up in magnification a little bit. Right now we're on 10. And I'm going to readjust the focus a little bit. And you'll see that we are coming into nicely sharp focus. Okay. This scope can look down to 10 yards, I believe, and this object I'm looking at is quite a bit closer than that. Okay. On 25, of course, there's not that much depth of field. Let's see if I can bring this branch into focus. It's quite a bit closer to me. So it should be right at the extent of, there we go. There it is. So the branch is maybe 15 yards away from me. I can bring it into very sharp focus at 25 yards. So if you want to do some dry practice, given the close focus and the depth of field, I haven't tried. I bet that on 5 power on this, I can comfortably do dry practice at home using a dot on the wall. The yellowish leaves you see at the bottom of the image are, I think, less than 10 yards from me. So overall, the way this scope is configured is very clever. Again, I think the MOA for me at least is a fatal flaw. It will be very difficult to let the scope go. I really like it optically and mechanically. Here we are on 20 power. I really like it optically and mechanically. I think the Gunworks did this, Revic Gunworks, the same company, did an exceptionally nice job of it. I'm going to focus on the mountain again, and you'll see some stuff in between you. So when you have obstructions and stuff, the image quality, I think, is quite spectacular. Lots of eye relief. The scope is slightly heavier than I like overall, but I think it is just excellent. If you look at this picture of how the turrets are set up, notice that there are 2 rings there. The bottom ring is just a normal MOA scale. The top ring right now is just a second turn MOA scale. It's 25 MOA per turn. But what Revic offers, you can remove that and put in a calibrated BDC dial. And for people who like BDCs, this gives you a nice and clean way to still retain your MOA scale and have a BDC dial on there. The windage turret is covered, which is my preferred way of doing this, but the scope is still nicely waterproof even without the windage turret, so you should not have any issues using that if you are somebody who does windage all the time. Elevation is integrated into side focus, and it's a push button. There are 10 levels. They go from quite relatively bright to to very dim, so in low light it worked very nicely for me. I'm going to click through it a few times. Again, I'm not convinced we'll be able to see it in daylight, but there's a chance. Let's see. Yeah, no, I think it went not really. We turned it all the way down. In daylight, the scope does not need illumination, and when things get low, the way illumination is set up does not mess at all with the night adaptation. All in all, as far as long-range hunting scopes go, this is arguably one of my favorite designs out there right now. I just wish it was in Meridian, and I hope, I wish it was a little bit lighter. As is, it's a bit over 2 pounds, which is kind of outside of what I usually look at for a crossover scope. Other than the weight and the MOA thing, I have very little to complain about. I think it is an excellent design, one of the better ones out there. And, sort of stands to reason the Gunworks guys spend a lot of time in the mountains, spend a lot of time shooting far away. You may agree or disagree with how they set things up and their methods, but you can't argue with experience. They know what they're doing. We all have our preferences and stuff, but they are definitely working with both technical expertise, and just point to the other side of the mountain, and experience. I need to cut down some of these trees so I have a better view. Alright, thank you all for listening, and thank you all for watching. If you have any questions about the scope, do not hesitate to reach out at darklordofoptics.com. That's where I spend most of my time. If you put a comment under a video on YouTube and any of the other channels, I will eventually get to it, hopefully, but that may take some time. darklordofoptics.com is where I try to get everything answered immediately.